Okay, all right, I'm finally ready to talk about it. I was Christ's girl. He was my fella. Well, who wasn't? I worked the Fertile Crescent in between the Testaments. I knew potentates and prophets, centurions and saints, Pharisees and Sadducees, and I want to tell you, old capital H he was as sweet a kid as ever kept a girl up all night talking. Him talking, not me. I ain't talked. Till now. I was a cute kid from Gehenna. Mom and Dad were nothing much to write home about. I wasn't in his league in that department, but then I didn't have his press agents. And I'm alive today, so what does that tell you about this game? I learned the facts of life in the streets, and they were no surprise. I'd figured as much. The old man didn't cotton to my acquaintances among the Arab caravanners or the Roman legionnaires, so I skedaddled to Joppa as soon as I filled out. Wended my way with a Circassian slave dealer, a smoky blonde with porcelain skin. A blow to him when we got to Joppa and he found out that beautiful blonde Circassians went on the slave block automatically. Well, don't we all? On my own at 11, I made my only mistake in a lifetime fraught with opportunities. I listened to a Phoenician cooch choreographer on one night of free-flowing grape juice and agreed to meet him in Jerusalem for a fling at the movies. Got there and found out the movies hadn't been invented yet. Irked my ass, but I learned. So, I was in Jerusalem working both sides of the street called Straight. I was making notches through the Sanhedrin, also spreading goodwill among tourists and sending lots of Roman soldiers off to conquest, happy too. I reserve the right to render service to anyone, regardless. Things weren't as segregated as they look in your history books. When your era goes between hardcovers, they'll classify you all by religion too. I mean, Nixon was not quintessentially Quaker. Get my meaning? The boys in Jerusalem were just like boys all over, except for that world-famed cosmetic surgery. It don't affect performance, even if it does make them feel like they gotta overcompensate. But then country boys always do. Like I used to say to Veronica, they're all alike, only some of them are more alike than others. Veronica thought I was a brain. That's what makes you one. I used to invest some of her gelt for her. Oh, she's retired now, owns groves, owes me everything. Who doesn't? Which brings us to John the Baptist. Yeah. J the Bee was kinky for a kid, but cute. Where do they get the self-flaying and bug-eating stuff? It pops up in those tall, naughty, hot-eyed types. Something they read? I backed a couple of his first gigs and took back nothing but my principal and 10%. Could have copped expenses and tech advisor fees too, but Mary the Mag plays straight. John drew like lions and Christians put together. Kind of like your Gary Cooper and a couple of my old Fox muffs. He used to dress up like that when he'd visit my tent, and I talked him into trying it in public. Well, the in-crowd giggled, but the rubes, zowie. He'd stand where the north light hit him, work up tears, and give him saliva and salvation with those weird glowing eyes. I think his pancreas must have been fucked. Locust eater, you know. Luke the physician agreed with me. On everything. John the Bee was his own worst friend. Had a complex inferiority. We spent some spare time together horizontally, and the faster he'd go, the louder he'd yell, "I am unworthy! You deserve better! I'm dirt!" Sometimes I'd soften and give him a flash of the lash and a gouge with the stiletto heels, and he'd feel better about things. Oh, he was a setup for old Capital H's press corps. They knew they had a class act in Jesus, and they wanted to get him introduced to the crowd by someone with garbo, Spanish for style. And here was John, packing in the populace and moaning how he wasn't worthy. I didn't see it coming, to tell you the truth, and that's what I'm here to do. JC started haunting John's crowd. It was like James Dean studying Brando, dig? Or Donovan sucking up to Dylan. I don't say they had anything actual going, JC and John, but performers are mostly twin-gated, and John had this aura of bondage and discipline. He saw this saintly kid in blue-white, hell to keep clean in Palestine, and he took him in. Or Jesus took him in, have it your way. I don't think JC was consciously hustling John. He was just an ambitious kid with a top dodge aching to get out of Galilee, and the top attraction on the Salvation Circuit was woo-woo over him. I'd have taken advantage of John myself. It was those disciples made it all schmarmy. Imagine 12 Harvey Levins. John would be standing up on an evocative outcropping of primeval sandstone in the last roseate rays of a Mediterranean sunset, like I taught him to, wailing sweet and wild how there was one to come after him. The Messiah bit was his big wind-up. And this whole apostle lot were circulating among the suckers, saying as how the one was Jesus. Jesus was the man, number 2 with a bullet, sure to cop all best newcomer awards. Hell racket it is, really, huh? I would have retired old John with a solid annuity and waited till the right time to issue his golden hits, if that goddamn Salome hadn't happened along. I hate 2 things in this world: sheriffs who don't stay bought and rich amateurs. Salome came home from school in Rome, my dear, overdoing the I must elevate my people shtick. She had everything: money, position, looks, expensive grooming actually, palanquins, a hymen, and a fashion sense that denuded every ostrich in the Mediterranean for a decade. Effective, I grant you, but on that budget I could have brought back the matriarchy. And Princess S never had to go on her back to get anyone on her side. Oh, stuff it, Mary Magdalene. Stick with the story, M.M. Salome came palanquining by on one of John's matinees and caught him killing the tribes. I guess she was bored by her initial hit. Your hometown is a come-down after you've seen the Colosseum. And she was limited. Her mom and stepdad must have drawn some sharp lines for her about mingling bloodlines with the Roman devils. All Herod and Herodias had to offer was racial purity. So Sal had faced the fact that in Judea she could look forward to nothing much more than a state marriage with some climber for the Sanhedrin. I felt for her. Under the stove with a broom I felt for her. Oh, stop that, Mary. So here she tumbles onto some local circumcised talent with Class A vibrations. Her platinum mesh veils blew back. I think she controlled them on strings. And John caught just one fast shot of rubies and boobies. I was at the show that day, counting the take and judging the laughs and some new material, and for the first time I heard John Boy lose his place. Oh, he was prime pro. He got him back with some Elijah and Apocalypse. But I saw where he was staring, and so did 12 little men. John was fit to be tied and whipped and stuck with pins through his nipples. But nothing I did helped. When he started canceling late shows on full moon nights, I knew in whose palanquin to look for him. In a certain palace parvis. The apostles were hot. They'd tried for an intro for their boy to Salome, but nothing doing. They caught John off guard long enough to get him to pull a big baptism special with Jesus, featuring special dialogue by that shit-eating Simon called Peter. Never trust a boy that changes the family name. Then the rest of them, dotted in the mob, cried out how they saw the Holy Spirit descend, and JC was the entertainment event they'd all waited for. And as it eventuated, the papers that day were looking for filler material, and JC started going on for the shows John missed. Well managed, I admit it. Well, I saw the writing on the wall. That is where I learned to read. And I was going to talk retirement to my client, but I hadn't reckoned on true love. You can understand why I wouldn't. I don't know what upper-class chicks mix in their lip balm, but it hit J the B like DMT in the eyeball. Whatever twaddle Salome was giving John, and that's all she was given, I'll lay you 1 to 1, he took mainline to the heart. Salome said nobody understood her, with that finishing school lisp I'm not surprised, and her home was stifling, and stepdaddy looked at her, and next thing we knew, stepdad was being laid to filth by J the B, who was being no court poet to little Mrs. Mammy, too. Now you can't mix showbiz and politics, they're too much alike. I tried to talk touring, getting John on the road. He'd blown it in the big pomegranate, but the sticks were clawing for him. Oh, our crowds were still record, but the take grew daily less. Half was comps now, spies and columnists, as John waxed wroth about uncleanliness in the palace. Herod was already unpopular, as only the last in a long line of ass-kissing genocidal sellouts can be. Herodias had nothing but her fictional dignity, so being called Satanist adulterers did not help their image. Sal saw her name in the papers, and so what? Rich kids think daddy can buy off anything. The upshot was, Herod invited John and Salome to do an act at the palace. Salome danced, it says here. I tried to talk to the turkey, but come twilight he followed the mimosa fumes to the big house. Last I saw of him. Broke my heart. He left the till behind. I put it in a strong box in Caesarea in his name, minus my moving expenses. and found an excuse to remove me to the seashore. Well, the papers in Caesarea had banner headlines: how Herod bumped off John and Salome, quote, killed herself in love's despite, end quote. Having a special device that reads between lines, I cooled it in Caesarea with some sympathetic sandalwood factors and wound up at a bash of Pontius Pilate's. His wife was with him, but there are glances that make heliography look slow. So I got it all together next day, just in time to accept an impromptu invite that arrived on a silver salver, weighted down by several star sapphires and King Herod's favorite opal. Ever since then, I think of Caesarea as the big opal. Well, old P. Pilate and I whiled away some memorable Toms Perdue while Mrs. P. busied herself writing dream books. I'm not one to kiss and tell, so I won't tell you about the kissing. Pontius had already had 6 years in the Holy Land and was ready to give it back to Baal when I came along and rekindled his interest in my hot-blooded, paradoxical, ever-restless people. The whole Herod, Salome, John brouhaha had reached Rome and brought down on Pontius the one thing he dreaded most: paperwork. So he had sternly warned Herod to cool everything. Therefore, things were calm in Palestine outside of a certain seaside villa, and I greatly fear I got a little bit out of touch. Like I often say, it's just as easy to fall for the well-set-up agent of a world power through whose hands half the world's taxes trickle as it is to bob for dropped olives in a cow pasture. I don't really say it that often. If you're listening with anything between your ears, once is enough. So, about a year and a half later, Tiberius, whom I never really met, ordered Pilate and retinue to La Giroux to handle the Passover crowds. I needed some new undies anyway. Somebody was always swiping them and hanging them on Caesar's bust in the embassy. He was like a little boy. So I trundled up to the focus of all face, a respectful league behind my procurator. I can be kittenish when I know all the bills are paid. So PP and I kept Billy Doo scooting to and fro on the wings of trained doves. His replies were a little slow getting to me because the dear little dapple darlings had to drag back strings of pearls and dishes of cut diamonds, a new item at the time. I leased a comparative hovel just one secret tunnel away from the official residence and made a distinct contribution to welfare by hiring about 500 hunky Hebrews to redecorate it. I'm trying to say I was busy, no time to read the papers. When everything and everybody was bronzed and burnished, I held a press conference just so I could tell the scribes I didn't want any publicity. They're your best friends. They loved their party favors, none of whom was underage, and when they'd finished loving them, I joined the party. I was still basking in the applause for my entrance. The elephant, of course, was rented. When one of the press corps held up this 5-star headline with a 3-word phrase about me and asked me how did I like them opals. Well, at first I didn't understand exactly what I was being called. I've never been anywhere near Babylon, and that other word is one whose meaning I do not know. Then my eyes uncrossed. Never lose your cool in front of scribes that sell your giblets. And I saw who was supposed to have said it about me. Well, I gagged, I really did. I gave Jesus his first chance, or he stole it from me, it amounts to the same thing. And here he was making pronouncements about scarlet women, and me a dyed-in-the-wool damask conservative. I said something about Pontius and me being just good friends, accidentally pulled a lever which dropped the entire press corps into a pool full of kosher gin, and went off to my bedwing to peruse the late editions. Was I aced? Apparently the kid had not only got to be hot news, but was in fact the very disturbance PP had been sent in to settle. I only skimmed the reviews of Jesus' number, positive thinking, guaranteed eternal wages, kingdom at hand, all golden oldies. But this cat had set himself up as king of the Giroux, and get this for unsubdivided Gaul, heir apparent and incontestable for the throne of heaven itself. Okay, blasphemy and treason are matters of individual taste, I grant you. But on top of that, he had libeled me as 8 kinds of awful, none of them nice. I turned to my trusty eunuchs, as far as I can throw them, and said, and I quote, "Get out the gold lame number I was saving for Saturnalia, big ass. Mama has got to go fight for her reputation in the streets, where I got it in the first place. You won't find it in the scriptures unless some big-mouthed Dead Sea Gnostic came unbribed, but there has not since Moses met monotheism been an encounter like the day I went looking for Emmanuel. Never trust a boy that changes his name. I did everything to attract attention but set off Roman candles, this being a local dispute. They say his entrance into Jerusalem was a fair-sized show. Well, I had laborers laying pavement before me, trumpeters dressed as satyrs and centaurs, 200 girls from an establishment where I'm on the board of directors banging sistrums and timbrels, plus the living waters, balloons for the kids, smoke curtains, trick-flying flamingos, and just for the hell of it, formation marching giraffes. I myself was on a mastodon's back. You could still get a mastodon in those days if you didn't ask any questions. In a gilded cage, flinging backsheesh like birdseed to the holiday hordes. Costumint wrote it off as PR. I just wanted to show capital H him that I starts with a capital letter too. I circled around the byways for hours, and fun's fun, but I was getting raw on the roost from my platinum perch and wondering if I hadn't scared a certain slanderer into the mountains of Moab, when suddenly, right in the street called Straight, the whole parade jerks to a halt and everybody, giraffes included, kneels. And there ahead of me is a certain notable historical personage and his tabernacle 10+2. The whole Megillah parts no less, so he can make his way to me on my swinging seat, and I saw I was up against something special. Cool, I don't lose for long. He was wearing lifts and his flunkies were groveling low, so I looked from his little men to him and said, "Well, who have we here? Snow White?" He gave them a glare and growled, "Get lost." All the extras split. Giraffes, tourists, the lot. A couple of disciples tried to stick, but he withered a fig tree to show me meant business, and there was some fast and fancy skulking. I just perched, freshening my makeup, and let him take a long, slow look. He was good, I don't deny. Ankled around my mastodon, checked my rig, nodded slowly whilst calculating my clout, and then said, real limpid like, "Woman, come down, I want to talk to you." Granting him nothing, I said, "You want to talk to me? What do you think I am, St. Francis of Assisi?" He burned a bit and said, "This is your idea of sneaking into town?" "Who does your hair?" I countered. "Look," he said, "this is doing neither of us any good. Why not climb down from that beast and we'll have us a clack over a cooling drink?" "Don't mind if I do," says I, real Nancy-like, and gave him some legs showing je ne sais quoi as I slithered down the dumb animal. He gave a girl not one bit of help on the steps, keen and cool he. Taverns in Judea had no doors, thank God, because we would have stood there till the second coming if I'd waited for him to open one for me. The host pulled out a chair for me. We sat ourselves down, told the lackey to leave the bottle and go kiss his mezuzah, and got down to business. "Girl," said God's plenipotentiary over a soothing liqueur, "I do not want by any means to queer your pitch, but as you have glimmed, I am a public figure and therefore besieged for statements on all affairs of note. You rank. As it happens, one of my stable issued a statement on yourself without my initials. However, in the interest of corporate solidarity, I've got to stand by said release. I hope you see my side." "Fella," I ripostes, "I have never fouled a fellow artiste, having been, as you may recall, no small bananas in John's boost up the ladder. I mean, hits are good for everyone. But I am now a private person with a small neighborhood business in no mood for a scarlet limelight." "What are bananas?" he asked. I could see he was still a basically small-town kid with a large talent, being manipulated by a crass commercial combine. "Little yellow fruits from Asia," I elucidated. "Ain't you traveled, honey?" "Mine has been a strange life," he began. "Well, I am now, and I have always been a woman, and if they were naming a holiday for me, they'd have to call it Pushover." That kid's story squeezed the Drambuie out of my heart. Illegitimate, always an outcast, no peer group, 'cause all the others his age had got it in the slaughter of the innocents. Wretched, you know. Talented as all get out, just finding himself. Then this syndicate moves in, gets him to sign a lot of stuff he don't understand. He still thinks they're his friends. I sneaked a look at him through the bottom of a snifter. Looks, charm, star quality, he had it. Kind of Monty Clift, but taller. In the right hands could be a classic, the right release dates, steer clear of politics, and 60 years later he could still be wheeled out for specials. Spin Passover with a Palestinian tradition, that sort of thing. But the way these apostle types were shuffling and dealing him, it was strictly a couple of seasons for a couple of shekels, a tragic end, and then out of the bins to make way for the next novelty. I arranged a meeting that night with him and company. I've been hors de la biz for too long, and I ached for a project. Plus, I ain't denying it, he had something. Call it me. A note from PP at the villa. Councils all day, councils all night, clairvoyant getting suspicious, lots of fright wagon ambassadors tomorrow. Forgive me my PN, here's a nest egg. Sent the nest egg to a numbered nest in none of your business, and started hunting for a little something to slip into for the confab. While I was bending over, I happened to see my horoscope on the floor, so I expected the dirk that came whizzing through the window, passed over me, and buried itself in a slave I was wary of anyway, and the note on it that said, "Here's what we do to talent rustlers in the big time." and the 12 sets of prints my chum of police dusted off of that dagger. I sprayed my wardrobe trunk as a precaution, shook dead asps out of my go for the throat lame, and got into my war paint and my after the fall wedgies. I got there early so's I could check out each apostle as he slithered in. Peter was a dud, shrewd on a con, but otherwise sludge. When Jesus would say, "My kingdom is coming," Peter would duck. John the Beloved was their liaison with the gay press, did Jay's outfits, not bad, but out of his depth in management. Andrew was the real brains, or the nearest thing to it. He'd been on my staff when I handled John the Bee, and his whole style was just a pale copy of mine. He blushed when he saw me, and I should think so. He must have been a double agent all along. He sneered around a cigar okay, but he was all ivy and no wall when it came to legal training. When I saw what they'd made my baby sign, I retched. Wouldn't have stood up in any court in what is now Christendom. Judas was sicko-psycho, coiling in corners, playing mind games with fellows who had no pieces to play with. Kind of a paranoid you can always tell what they're up to because they accuse everybody else of it. I felt reins in my hands. I had picked up contract law with my first case of clap, so me and Andrew got down to the needy-greedy right off. Poor J.C., who could sway multitudes with the right script, was a lamb before the law. He just sat there looking baffled while I rewove clauses and codicils. I had worked out a deferred salary deal for him that would keep him from flinging it to charity fast as he got it, and still leave plenty for the vipers to cut each other's throats for. I was writing myself in as artist and repertory manager when J.C. starts gagging behind me, and I turn in time to catch that flitty John hiding a little packet of white powder in his cleavage. J.C.'s cup was runneth over, and his eyes were rolling like dice. "Whee, whee, whee," he shrieked. "I'm the Son of God, and guess who's forgiven and who's not?" The owner of the place turned alabaster, dropped a bowl of bitter herbs, and ran out crying, "Druggies, sickies, police!" John tried to tiptoe in the garden, but I grabbed him by the hem and wrenched the little glassine paquette from him. One sniff and I was livid, and small wonder. "So this is how you coerced him into that joke you call a contract," I screamed. Andrew swallowed his mouth. I'd stumbled on the truth. J.C. was dancing on the table, flinging matzo shrapnel at us. Judas ran out calling, "Betrayal, betrayal, you're going to turn me into the police." We weighted J.C. down with some cold compresses, and I sent Matthew down to Luke, the physician, for some niacinamide. But then 20 guys in uniform ran in, whom I knew very well out of uniform. The landlord and Judas were with them, pointing at shadows and chandeliers and yelling, "That's the one, arrest him!" The chief saw me and said, "Mary, haul us out of here. This is a bust." There was J.C. with a menorah on his head, John in a corner with his mascara running, Andrew shredding papers, and the others pelting each other with pillows. Outside I could hear shields rattling. "Well, you fiddled with fate, dear. I got a tin ear." J.C. was beyond help anyway, crawling down the table muttering, "Zap, you're a loaf. Zap, you're a fishes." I gathered up my gold lame and got. Well, the rest you know, at least in that hyped-up version those 4 clabbermouths put out. Turned out they had a solid deal on book rights. Worms that they were, when their meal ticket got punched on a molehill in the desert called Golgotha, they turned saintly and set up a lot of competitive cults as gurus, perfect teachers, and whatnots. Then they all got aced by a piece of strictly talk show talent called Saul or Paul. I told you about boys that changed their name. I had all I could do to pour oil on PP's troubled waters. My initials were cleared, of course, when it came out that those dreadful accusations had come from a gay dope ring. PP and I stuck it out in Palestine for a few more years, and then he headed back to Rome, under Caligula no less. Oh, I could tell you a few stories about her that would curl your hair. By the way, honey, who does? You could sue them.